This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, President Abdelmajid Tebboune has highlighted at the 19th session of the Executive Bureau of the Conference of African Constitutional Judicial Bodies the importance that Algeria grants to strengthening constitutional justice in the African continent. Members of the Council of the Nation today approved the text of the law criminalizing French colonialism in Algeria, reflecting the will of the people and enshrining the Algerian people's deep conviction that national memory is neither negotiable nor divisible. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the creation of the so-called the Board of Peace in Davos and announced as well the framework for a future agreement on Greenland. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Slimani. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has highlighted today in Algiers the importance that Algeria attaches to strengthening constitutional justice in the African continent, affirming that it remains a support for the continent and a defender of its people's right to build strong and sovereign institutions. In a speech addressed to the participants in the 19th session of the Executive Bureau of the Conference of African Constitutional Judicial Bodies at the International Conference Center, Abdel Rahal, read by the President of the Constitutional Court, Ms. Leila Aslawi, the President of the Republic emphasized Algeria's commitment to strengthening African constitutional justice, promoting cooperation among African judicial bodies, supporting the continent politically, legally, and developmentally, and reinforcing constitutional justice as a guarantee of the Constitution's supremacy, separation of powers, and protection of rights and freedoms.
Algeria reaffirms its commitment to strengthening this active continental space so that it can play its role in promoting cooperation among African constitutional judicial bodies, consolidating constitutional justice, and contributing to the establishment of the rule of law on the continent. Algeria, faithful to its principled and constant commitment to Africa, continues to be a support for this continent in political, legal, and developmental fields, defending the rights of its peoples and the building of strong and sovereign institutions. In this context, it is essential to reinforce African constitutional justice as a fundamental guarantee of the supremacy of the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the protection of rights and freedoms.
Now, on Thursday, members of the Council of the Nation approved the text of the law criminalizing French colonialism in Algeria, with reservations on 13 articles in its current form for the purpose of reconsidering and revising its provisions, particularly those relating to the issues of compensation and apology due to their incompatibility with the national policy established by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. This text was approved in public session chaired by the President of the Council, Mr. Azouz Nasri, who praised the content of the law criminalizing colonialism in Algeria, considering it a reference for countries that have experienced the bitterness and tyranny of colonialism and its oppression. Mr. Nasri explained that it was a gain for the Algerian people and the struggling family, praising the distinguished initiative expressed by the deputies of the National People's Council in proposing a law criminalizing French colonialism in Algeria to be an eternal witness to the brutal crimes committed by French colonialism in Algeria, which aim to erase humanity, identity, and property everywhere in the country. In his speech following the approval of the text, the Minister of Justice, Abdelmalek Tashrift, said that the text reflects the will of the people and enshrines the Algerian people's deep conviction that national memory is neither negotiable nor divisible, in line with the guiding principles always emphasized by the President of the Republic in the context of protecting and preserving national memory. On behalf of President Tebboune, Prime Minister Seferi presided today in the province of Constantine a ceremony honoring a number of economic institutions as part of the celebrations for the President of the Republic's award for Best Exporter of 2025. The ceremony was organized under the slogan Quality, Trust and Leadership, reflecting the state's keenness to recognize the efforts of the winning institutions and highlight their effective role in supporting and diversifying national exports outside the hydrocarbon sector. In this context, ETS Haddoud Salim, a company active in the marketing and export of dates, won the award for Best Exporter of the Year 2025 in the agricultural products category. The National Electricity and Gas Company, Sonalgaz, was also awarded the prize for the Best Exporter in the services category. African experts and members of the League of Ulama, preachers and imams of the Sahel have praised Algeria's pioneering experience in combating terrorism and violent extremism, considering that this experience constitutes a model to be followed to achieve security and stability in Africa, particularly in the Sahel region. More with Masoud Sharfi.
This was highlighted during the participation of speakers in the high-level scientific symposium on religious diplomacy in the African Sahel, organized by Lopez in collaboration with the High Islamic Council (HIC), with the participation of 11 African countries. In this regard, the representative of the state of Niger within Lopez, Ibrahim Musa Suleiman, stressed the role of religious diplomacy in Sahel security, highlighting Algeria's pioneering experience and its important role in combating terrorism and violent extremism. For his part, the director of the Center for Quranic Studies at Bayero University in Nigeria, Ahmed Morshada, praised Algeria's approach as a model for resolving African crises and emphasized involving women to enhance security and stability. In turn, the representative of the state of Mali within the League, Sheikh Alpha Dahia Konta, praised the Algerian experience, calling for benefiting from it to address Sahel challenges, and highlighted the symposium's role in sharing experiences and strengthening the contribution of imams and religious figures in combating extremism and terrorism. The representative of Mauritania within the League, Mr. Moussa Sarr, stressed the role of religious diplomacy and the symposium in raising awareness, noting that religious awareness is essential as conventional approaches alone are insufficient to combat extremism and terrorism.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Now to the Middle East with the latest development in the state of Palestine with Masoud Shafi again.
An infant died today, Thursday, from the extreme cold in Gaza City in Palestine. Local medical sources reported that 3-month-old Ali Abu Zur died in Gaza City due to the severe cold. With the death of Abu Zur, the number of children who have died from the extreme cold in the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the war has risen to 10, amid a shortage of aid and lack of heating. Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, has warned of deterioration in the humanitarian situation in Gaza due to poor weather conditions and continued Israeli attacks on the Strip. The organization's project coordinator in Gaza, Hunter McGovern, said that the Gaza Strip is currently experiencing harsh winter conditions, noting that large numbers of residents are living in rudimentary plastic shelters. He explained that those who do not live in these shelters live in old tents that have been severely damaged by strong winds and rain, adding that Palestinians in Gaza have been living in these tents for a long time and have been forced to move them several times due to the winter and floods. McGovern emphasized that children are dying from the cold, as are adults, considering that the description disaster is not sufficient to convey the magnitude of the tragedy. For his part, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, in Palestine reported that the Zionist occupation imposed a curfew on approximately 25,000 Palestinians in certain areas of the city El Khalil in the occupied West Bank, plunging families into total isolation as part of a large-scale military operation. For the third consecutive day, the Zionist occupation forces are continuing their aggression against the southern part of the city El Khalil, closing several main and secondary roads with metal gates, conducting raids and searches in many homes, ransacking their contents, and physically assaulting and arresting Palestinian residents. Meanwhile, the International Organization for the Support of the Rights of the Palestinian People has condemned the dangerous escalation led by the Zionist occupation against the Palestinian people and its humanitarian institutions since the ceasefire agreement came into force in October 10, 2025. This escalation is manifested in systematically military violations in the Gaza Strip and unprecedented direct targeting of UNRWA in occupied East al-Quds. In a statement, the organization said that these violations have resulted in the killing of 466 Palestinians in a context of repeated shooting, military incursions, bombing, destruction of homes, and deliberate obstruction of the work of rescue teams. It stressed that these acts constitute a consistent pattern of war crimes and genocide, undermining the very essence of the ceasefire and the humanitarian protocol attached to it.
In another development, the UN Office for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory has called on the Zionist occupation to put an end to measures leading to Palestinian geographical and demographic fragmentation, including forced displacement and colonial expansion in East Jerusalem and its surroundings. In a statement quoted by the media, the UN office reported an acceleration in the forced displacement of Palestinians in East Jerusalem, marked by an intensification of demolition and eviction operations in Silwan, south of the Old City. Now to other news. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the creation of the so-called the Board of Peace, an initiative that, according to a draft of its founding charter, seeks to promote conflict resolution worldwide. The proposal was initially presented last September as part of his plan to end the war in Gaza, although its scope was subsequently expanded beyond the genocide that has been going on for more than 2 years. Trump will be the first president of the body, which will have the role of mediating and coordinating peace efforts. The White House has appointed Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, as members of the founding Executive Council. According to the draft charter, member countries would have 3-year terms unless they contribute $1 billion to obtain permanent membership. A senior U.S. official said that around 35 world leaders have accepted the invitation, including several Middle Eastern allies, NATO countries such as Turkey and Hungary, as well as states in Central Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. The initiative has also sparked controversy. Belarus has agreed to join despite Western criticism of its human rights record, while Russia and China, both permanent members of the UN Security Council, have yet to confirm their participation and have expressed reservations about any mechanisms that could affect the role of the United Nations. Trump, a regular critic of the UN, has said that he does not intend to replace it and that the international body should continue its work. The Peace Board initiative, which comes amid a growing transatlantic dispute over Greenland, tariffs and other issues, has drawn a cautious response from some close U.S. allies who are often uncomfortable with Trump's unilateralistic and America-first approach to international diplomacy. After several weeks of endless statements, Trump unexpectedly announced in Davos the framework for a future agreement on Greenland, although without offering specific details. At the same time, he lifted his tariff and military threats related to the Arctic territory. The details with Ms. Shafi.
The announcement was greeted with enthusiasm by financial markets in the United States and within cautious relief in Denmark. However, in Greenland, an autonomous territory under Danish sovereignty, the reaction was one of cautious and mistrust given the lack of clarity about the actual scope of the proposal. Danish Defense Minister Trussel Lund Poulsen stressed on Thursday that NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has no mandate to negotiate on behalf of Denmark on Greenland. Nevertheless, Nonetheless, he stressed that Rutte has worked in a manner loyal to the cohesion of the Atlantic Alliance in a context of diplomatic tensions. From the Davos Economic Forum, the U.S. president indicated his willingness to engage in dialogue with the Danish side, far from the use of force in Greenland.
And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States. The United States is treated very unfairly by NATO. I want to tell you that. And when you think about it, nobody can dispute it. We give so much and we get so little in return. And I've been a critic of NATO for many years.
According to a source close to the talks held in Davos between Trump and Rutte, the United States and Denmark agreed to begin renegotiating the 1951 defense agreement on Greenland. The same source indicated that security in the Arctic will be strengthened and that European NATO member countries will contribute to this effort. Since 1951, a defense agreement updated in 2004 has granted broad powers to the U.S. armed forces in Greenland. Although they must first inform the Danish authorities, the current debate once again places the territory at the center of strategic discussions on security and military presence in the Arctic.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Smani. Stay tuned.